I'm Betsy Green, Executive Director of the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers. I am so happy to introduce you to our organization and the wonderful work we do. For 31 years, GYSTC has been the leading nonprofit advocate in Georgia for excellence in science, technology, engineering, and math education at the elementary level. We advocate for our hardworking Georgia teachers with ongoing professional development training so they can maintain the highest skill levels to prepare our children for success. We advocate continuously for quality science education for Georgia children and their families with year-round activities for kindergarten through 8th grade students. Our reach is statewide with special focus on those children and communities who are underserved and need us most. We are enthusiastic and we are creative. GYSTC programs are available so entire communities can come together around science-based exploration, education, and fun. Today, I'd like to share one such program we are most proud of, Georgia Discover Camp. As you will see, it's a learning camp with a science twist. Any Georgia student can participate and every Georgia student will enjoy what we have in store. Please take a look.
Hello, summer campers, and welcome to summer camp. This is our first day, and you are here today with me. My name is Tammy Nowell, and I am from the Southwest Georgia Youth Science and Technology Center. Our campus is located in Bainbridge, Georgia, and I'm going to take you on a lesson today. It is called Be a Pollinator. We're going to be talking about pollinators. We're going to be talking about the life cycle of a honeybee, and we're going to go to a really cool place called my yard, and you're going to get to see my honeybees. But to start off, I want to read you a little bit of a book because I want you to have some background or some refreshers on some of these things that you may have been working on in school or maybe going to work on in school. And my book is called Pollination. So I'm going to just kind of have a seat here real quick while I read this book so that I can stand and read at the same time. This is a cool book too, and you may possibly have it in your library or your even in your classroom. So, teamwork, muscle and bone, fish and water, milk and cookies, some of the best things in life depend on each other. Well, milk and cookies may not depend on each other, but most plants and a lot of insects do. They need each other to survive. New plants don't just decide to grow one day. They need to help or to get things started. That's where insects come in. Wind and water help too. They make it possible for most plants to grow new plants. And if you can see here, I have a picture of one of my cute little fellas that I have, or cute little girls that I have at my house, and it's a honeybee. And they have a really super big job because more than 90% of all plants need a pollinator. Now, how cool is that? Pollination. Insects, wind, and water, they help the plants. They do this through pollination. That is how they carry pollen from one plant to another plant. This starts the process that allows for the plants to grow. Now, we talked about parts of a flower, and this is a really cool activity that you could do maybe later this afternoon or sometime this week, is go out and pick your own flower, and let's talk about this. Pollen is actually dust. It's found at the end of a flower's stamen. Stamens are the male part of the plant, and they're long and thin, and on the end of each stamen is an anther. The anther is what holds the pollen. To make a new plant, the pollen must reach the pistil. The pistil is the female part of the plant. The stigma is at the top of the pistil. The tube below is the style, The ovary is at the base of the pistil, and this is where the seeds are made. So here we have petal, stamen, anther, stigma, pistil, ovary, and style. In many flowers, petals protect the pistil. They surround it and they keep it safe. The stigma is sticky. Pollen can easily stick to it, and then it goes down the style where it reaches the ovary. Well, help is on the way. Plants do not get up and move on their own. They have no way to move their pollen to make new plants, so they need help. Insects, wind, and water give them all the help that they need. Pollen can even be carried on an animal's fur. Pollen sticks to the insects, and there's one of my girls again. Pollen sticks to the insects when they feed on the flowers. They carry the pollen on them as they fly. Some of that pollen falls off, or it can be caught by the wind or the rain. Either way, the pollen's journey begins. In a plant, the male cell fertilizes the female cell. Pollen is the male cell. The female cells are held in the ovary, and they make the seeds together. Now to get into our pollinators. The helpers that carry the pollen, well, they're called the pollinators. Their job is super, super, super important. Without them, there would be no new plants. Wind and water help a lot too, but two types of living things are the biggest heroes, and they are the bees and the butterflies. Oh, and did you know a bat is a super cool pollinator? Who would ever thought about a bat being a pollinator? Bats, moths, and birds are also good pollinators. Bees are some of the best pollinators. They have hairy bodies that trap the pollen. They usually visit the same kind of flower. This keeps the pollen where it is needed. Their small size and their short legs help bees get inside of the flowers too. Butterflies trap pollen on their bodies too. They walk around on groups of flowers, and this helps spread the pollen. Nature is like a puzzle. Each part of nature connects to an amazing whole. Pollination is like that. Plants, insects, wind, and water are all parts of the puzzle. And nature needs every piece. So, talking about that other activity that maybe you could do this afternoon, why don't go out and pick a flower and maybe dissect it and see if you can find some of those parts to see what see the different parts of a flower. So, I'm going to talk about what we're going to be doing here today. We've got some materials on the table, and if you haven't gotten those, I really hope you do, because I want to take you somewhere very special. And where I want to take you now is inside of my own personal beehive in my yard. So come on, guys, come to my house. Everybody, my name is Tammy Nowell. I am the regional coordinator for Southwest GYSTC, located in Bainbridge, Georgia. But today, however, we're in Cairo, Georgia, and we're going to be talking about the life cycle of honeybees and the importance of honeybees to agriculture and to us as human beings. All right, and now just to get started, because safety is always so important, I'm going to put on some protective clothing. Now, you already see I have on my protective gloves because I've been kind of messing around the honeybees back here, but we always want to make safety first. So to keep those honeybees away from my head and eyes, I am going to put on just a jacket with a veil over it. That's going to keep them away from me. It's going to keep them from going in my shirt, hopefully. Another safety aspect I have going on back here behind me is I've got a smoker. The smoke gives them a feeling that there's a forest fire, and it's a protection pheromone that they put off. It's one that they put off to the entire hive. And so they actually kind of go down and hide inside of their brood boxes. One of the things that I do, I have to do this about once a week, a little less often during the winter, is I come out and I inspect these hives. And what I'm looking for are several different things. I'm looking for any indication of hive beetles, and I'm also looking for any indication of mites. Now this looks pretty healthy. As you can see in this particular frame, there's different cells, and these cells that are capped off here have larvae in them. So larvae is going to be that first stage of the life cycle of a bee. And you can also see honey cells. I'm not sure if you can see any of that, but you can see honey cells inside of here where you can see honey. Now, this is not the honey that we would use to eat, but this is the honey that they use to feed themselves, feed the baby bees, and they use to feed the queen. So now I want to get ready to pull another frame, and what I'm doing is I'm looking for the queen. I'm looking for either the queen or either evidence of the queen. Now the way I'm going to find the queen is she is the largest of the bees. She's very much bigger than all of these. All of these that we see on this frame are worker bees. One other way is if you mark the queen, and the queen in this particular hive is marked with a blue head. So I don't see her, but that helps me be able to find her really quickly without disturbing them too much. Now bees are super, super important to our whole ecosystem and agriculture. If we didn't have honeybees, there would be no us. Now these are pretty wild bees right here. So let me get them calmed down just a bit. Smoke does not actually calm the bees down. What it does is it makes them believe that there is a fire, and so they'll put off a pheromone to warn the other bees to go in a protective type mode. They will eat up a lot of honey. They'll gorge on the honey, and it's the actual honey that relaxes them. It's not the fire that relaxes them. And I want to look right here because that's a big chunk of bees, just to see if they're hiding that queen girl somewhere in there. There she is. Hold on. They're trying to hide her. I'm following her with my hive tube. She's got a blue head. Everybody see that? Okay, so there we just found our girl. We know she's good. We know she's healthy. At this point in time, so this is May. The bees have plenty of fruits, vegetable plants, flowers, and all to go forage in order to pollinate and to bring back pollen for their honey that they make. So I really don't have to do a lot as far as feeding goes. But in the winter and summer months, if you'll notice on this hive, I have a jar which I will fill up with just a little concoction, a real simple concoction of sugar water. It's 1 part water, 1 part sugar. So if I put a cup of water, I'm going to put a cup of sugar. And I have to do that about once every week just to make sure that the bees are having plenty of food and have enough to feed their babies and the queen. Okay, so bees are not only important, which is a super important thing for us and for our survival, but honeybees have a huge economic impact on the state of Georgia. So honeybees bring in about $70 million in the economy for agriculture and other things such as honey and waxes and soap. But then if you look at it on the scale of the United States, it becomes super huge. So that turns into 20 billion for the United States. And so when we think of that in terms of what honeybees affect the economy and how they affect the economy, it is super tremendous. Now, the importance of bees to crops, where I've already talked about that. They pollinate the crops and make a healthier crop and a better crop for those farmers. I wonder why most beekeepers you see are wearing white or light colored clothing, and that's because bees see red and black, they see those as predators. Now bees' natural predators are bears, of course, everybody knows about bears, but then there's other things, raccoons and other mammals that are their predators, but we have to be very careful because things like other bees may get in here and try to steal their honey, and then of course like roaches or ants or other kind of insects that may try to get in there and steal their food. But one of the biggest killers of bees is pesticides, and these bees, we actually live across the road from a field. So far, we haven't had any trouble with that, but that's another big killer for the population of bees. You may ask, if we collect honey to sell, is this hurting the bees? Is this taking food away from them? Well, no, not really, because what I have here and what I've been taking you through today, this is called a brood box. Now, this is where all of the baby bees are in their little nursery. They're growing from larva to pupa to adult. Once they've filled out this whole box, I'm going to put a different type of box on top, and what it'll be called is a honey super. And in between that honey super and this brood box, I will have a queen excluder. And what that queen excluder looks like is kind of just like a screen, but as you saw earlier, the queen is the largest bee inside of a bee colony. So she can't get through this screen. Only the worker bees can get through the screen. And they're the ones who go up there and they place their pollen, they take their honey. The queen can't get up there to lay the babies because all the babies are down here. And so that's where you get your pure fresh honey and your pure fresh comb. And now they're still making honey down here to feed their babies and to feed themselves and feed the queen. Now I haven't got to that process yet, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, so you may wonder, what can I do as far as a career with bees? There's a lot of different things just besides being a beekeeper and making honey and things like that. Those are all really cool and they're wonderful things, but there's also a science behind bees. So let's think about, what can we do to protect our bees? What kind of career could we go in? So if you're excited about bees as I am, I want you to really, really think about that. Do more research on it and figure out what you can do to help the survival of the honeybees in your area. You may ask me, well, how do I teach people about honeybees? How do I teach students about honeybees? You can't bring all the students out to your hives. No, I can't. But I have another way I can get my bees to you. And so what I do is I'll pull me a couple of these frames. So I bring my bees to you. And I'll just pull a couple of frames just like this and slide them in here just like this. Shut this door, and of course I'll have it screwed really tight shut so they can't get out. And then there you go. My bees are all ready to come to your school and see you. So that's how I get my bees to you without you coming to me. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that whatever I've done and shown you with these bees has empowered you and has encouraged you to pursue a career in a STEM area. And I just want to thank you for being here. And if you want to know anything more about honeybees or the STEM careers that are available in honeybees, you can find that out at GYSTC.org. That's the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Center, GYSTC.org. So how cool was that? Wasn't that super exciting, going into my yard and seeing my bees, getting introduced to that beautiful queen and all of my worker bees, and seeing those little babies in there, seeing the eggs and the larvae and the pupa all in there. That was like super exciting. It was also pretty hard to film that video too, because sometimes I had bees kind of like all in my ears and I couldn't think. So those are my bees, and I hope you enjoyed watching those, and I hope you enjoyed coming into my yard in Cairo, Georgia, and my house with my bees. So I guess what I want to just kind of let's go over just a little bit next is, let me pull one of these frames. Well, this frame kind of shows you what you could not see that was going on inside of those cells. So this is from the egg to the bee. So the transformation of the egg into a bee takes 21 days. That's the life cycle. Isn't that so cool? The fertilized egg is set vertically at the bottom of the cell. Now this is the cell here, and down here would just be, it looks so tiny. It is smaller than almost like half of a piece of rice. It is so teeny and tiny. So after 3 days, the egg falls horizontally and transforms into a larva, which is right here. And when I'm going into my hives to check for my bees and check on them and make sure that they're good and healthy and make sure that their queen is still there and that she's still producing these baby bees, because remember, the queen is the mother of all the bees in that hive. The queen is the only one that can have more baby bees. So, they're abundantly fed by their nurse bees, and those nurse bees are worker bees. All of the bees that work in the beehive, in the colony, are all worker bees. They're all females, and they have different jobs, and they all do something. There's nurse bees, there's bees that go forage, there's bees that's job is specifically to take care of that queen and make sure that she's treated with all the royalty that she deserves. So, they're fed by the bees. A larva receives 1,300 visits per day. So in this stage right here, they're receiving like 1,300 checkups per day by their nurse bees until the bee closes the cell with a wax cover, which is up here, covering it up for it to grow. And then after 8 days, the larvae gets swollen up with food and becomes a pupa, and their organs are formed. 12 days after closing that cell, a young bee is born. During this whole process, the brood remains a constant temperature of 95 degrees. Now, how cool is that in the summertime in South Georgia, when sometimes it gets up over 100, they can keep it cool to 95 degrees. But even more cool than that, what about in the wintertime, where sometimes our winters aren't too bad, but say, what if it drops to 30 degrees? That's the bee's job, is to keep that brood, and that's the baby bees, at that constant temperature. So once it emerges, we come out with our young bee just after its birth. So there we go with that life cycle, and I'm going to pull one more important one out about the pollination of the foraging bees, because bees go out every morning, and believe it or not, they return back to their hive, back to their colony before dark. And at dark time, they're real restful and real peaceful, and they actually go to sleep. But don't be mistaken, they have guard bees. Those are also the female worker bees. Another job for that hive, another job for those workers is to guard the entrance of the hive to make sure that no invaders can come in there and take any of their babies or take any of their food supply that they've stored up. So anyway, here's the foraging bees. In summer, the bees leave the hive, and when they are halfway through their lives, guards, foraging, and bee scouts, then they gather and deliver nectar and pollen for 4 to 5 days, at the end of which, guess what? They die. The distance covered in a flight determines a bee's life. On an average, a foraging bee carries out 12 journeys per day, a frequency that depends upon how easy the gathering is and the proximity of the flower. And another kind of cool fact is that bees will only go about 1 mile to 3 miles out from where their colony is. So you need to make sure, if you ever decide to set up a bee colony, or if you know some people, or if you just want to help take care of bees, maybe plant some pollinating flowers, create a pollinator garden, do something to help those bees. I have some seeds here, and you could use some seeds like this, or go to the store, research and find out what kind of flowers do honeybees like the most, that they're most attracted to. So plant a pollinator garden. It doesn't have to be really big. It could be something very small. You could do it in a flower pot. But that would be something to really help and attract your bees. So, and in fact here, I brought this kind of as an example. This is something, and it's not for the honeybees. This is something like that you can use to house your mason bees. So this is something that you don't even have to use this. You could use a tin can, and you could take and put any kind of cylinder type object in here, especially like those new paper straws that we have, and stick them in here, and you can make your own mason bee home. So now we get ready to get down to our activity. So our activity is going to be, how can we make a pollinator? Well, I've got a few materials on this table, and we've sent out a list, and then I sent out some other things, and we're going to try a couple of different ways to see which pollinator is going to work the best. I'm going to start off with, if you've got your coffee filters, if you don't have coffee filters, you can use like little cupcake tins. You can use a paper plate, or even a real plate for that matter. But I kind of used coffee filters because it kind of reminded me a little bit of a flower. And I'm going to pour me some coffee in one. This is how I'm starting, because these are going to be my flowers. Oops, and I'm going to pour a little bit of sugar. You don't have to use coffee and sugar. It just works better if you have two different kind of coarse materials that are different colors, so that you can see how this pollination works. So I'm going to pour a little bit of this sugar in here. Probably really didn't need all of that much, but that's okay. And then I guess I'm going to have a seat here, and we're going to talk about the materials that I have on the table. And remember, if you just happen not to have all of these materials, or if it doesn't work as well the first time, what do we need to go back and do? We need to go back and redesign again. So let me give you our problem, because every engineer, every scientist always starts out with a problem. That is how everything is done. So today you're going to be my little engineers. Well, the problem is that we've got this farmer, and her name's Betsy, Farmer Betsy. And she wants her flowers to spread all over her garden. She wants to have a beautiful yard with beautiful flowers. So she decides she needs to bring in some good pollinators to help with her flowers and to help them reproduce, and to fill that ugly old garden space that's sitting out in front of her house that she wants to be filled with these beautiful flowers. Well, our job is to build a pollinator model to help our sweet old Farmer Betsy. So what kind of pollinators should she get? Now that's our job today. So let's look at the materials again. I told you I had my coffee and sugar. You can use cornmeal, you can use salt, whatever you've got at home. I've got a toilet paper roll here. I've got some toothpicks. I even brought a big toothpick, which is really not a big toothpick. It's a skewer to do like vegetables and meat on the grill. I've got some different kind of pom-poms here. If you don't have pom-poms, you know what's really cool to use? You could use cotton balls. That would be fine. I have got some pipe cleaners here. And then I've also got a couple of different colors of Play-Doh. So if you've got all of that ready, I'm going to start working on one of my pollinators. And the first one I'm going to work on is going to be what I think is one of the easier ones, is I'm going to make my pom-pom pollinator. And we're going to check and see how these things work. So let me get started. So maybe I jumped ahead too far. I need to make a plan. So in the engineering and design process, we had our problem, poor old Farmer Betsy and them ugly flowers that she wants to be beautiful. And so now I need to plan. I have my materials, I have planned that far. But kind of what should a pollinator model look like? Maybe that's a question we should think about. What characteristics should it have? What of these materials are going to help make it successful, and how are we going to build it? So what I'm going to do, like I said before, is I'm going to start out with what I think is going to be one of the easiest ones. And remember, if it doesn't work, I didn't fail. I just learned something new, and I can always go back and redesign. So I'm going to start off with some really cool colors. Let me see, I think I'm going to start off with this big pink one here. And then I'm going to put a purple one there. This is going to be the coolest looking bee you've ever seen. So this is something that's really easy to do, and like I said, if you had these skewers, you could do it on that too. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of show you how I'm going to go back and forth, and we're going to decide which one is the better pollinator. And this is just kind of demonstrating like what the honeybee would be doing as it's foraging back and forth. Okay, so if you can see that, there's what would be the pollen on my honeybee. So she's a pretty cool dude here, a cool worker. I can see grounds of coffee, and I can see a little bit of grounds of sugar on her, and I'm going to sit her right here. But what I most importantly want you to see is what she did to my coffee and my sugar. So this is what I want you to see here. So she was able to get a little bit of sugar in there, and before I turned it over, she was able to get a little bit of coffee in there. Let's see if we can do something even better. Okay, so I'm going to go with my Play-Doh. I've got orange and green. No particular reason, I just happened to pick these up. And I'm just going to make a couple of little balls here, rolling it around. And this time I think I'm actually going to use my larger skewer. So I'm going to put my bee, I want it to have a head. Let me put it ahead. And see, some things that we could do with these is we could take and cut these off, and of course, hopefully, if you haven't learned already, you know that an insect has 6 legs, so we could take and just kind of put some legs in there. And so here is my there's my other pollinator. Now let's see how this works. Okay, so this one picked up a good bit of sugar and a good bit of that coffee. Let's take a look and see what it will do in here. Okay, so that one did a pretty good job, a pretty amazing job there. So that was super cool. And like I said, let me reach down here, get my scissors I dropped. I wonder what would happen if I made some legs. I wonder if, and it's okay to wonder, remember that. That's the best thing in the world, is to wonder. So, I'm going to give my pollinator some legs. I'll give her 3 on this side and 3 on this side. because these honeybee pollinators have short little legs. I just wonder if I put legs on her, will that help her pollination any? Let's see. So I'm going to go back and forth. Back and forth again. Now let me see. Well, didn't do too great, but I do see some. There's some there, and then there's some there. So I guess her little pollinator legs did work pretty good. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to try out as a pollinator is my empty toilet paper roll. And what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to wrap this pipe cleaner around my toilet paper roll. And this is really a very cheap and easy way to do it if you don't have all of these materials. My poor little bee is coming loose. I didn't tie her good enough. And I wonder if anybody saw my dog that was in that video of my honeybees, how he came sneaking up in there. I call my honeybees his sisters. He's got a lot of sisters. They've lit him up a couple of times though, because he gets super nosy and he goes sniffing all up in their hive. They usually don't bother him too much, but when he gets nosy, because he's a really nosy dog, and he sticks his nose up into the entrance of their hive and tries to start sniffing around. I don't know what they think he is, if he's one of them Winnie the Pooh bears or what, because he's about that color. They get him sometimes. But and the worst thing about this is he never learns his lesson. He loves them. He goes back in there and he just snoops on them again. He doesn't want honey. He's just lonely. I think he just wants to play. I don't know. Lonely or not a very smart dog. But he is smart, though. I shouldn't say that about him, because he is a pretty smart, cool dog. He listens to me and he follows me and he knows what I say most of the time. Sometimes he gets rebellious and don't care. Sometimes my daughters have done that too. Not a good thing to do. Okay, so this could take just a little bit of time. But this is one of the easiest ways. And you can give it a head and do whatever you want to with it and decorate it. And I didn't bring a lot of stuff to decorate it with. You could put one of those pom-poms on it. You could give it a Play-Doh head. Give it a couple of antennas. And so I think I'm going to stick some Play-Doh in here and make it have a head, though. Okay, and I also need some antennae up here for my bee. I forgot one really important thing, and I should remember from all my bee bites. Forgot her stinger. There it is. So there's her stinger. Another kind of sad fact, though, this is really sad, that if a honeybee bites you, they're only going to bite you if they feel threatened by you. They're not just going to be going out there foraging, looking for nectar and stuff like that and pollen and whatever. They're not just going to come bite you. You have to be seriously making them believe that you are a threat to them. So don't be afraid of bees. I would really like for everybody to just kind of enjoy bees and love bees as much as I love bees. Because if they bite you, is where I was going, they're going to die. So they have to really feel threatened by you in order to bite you. So just make sure you kind of keep your distance from them and, let them live their own little life or whatever. And you'll be fine and they'll be fine. Hold on, I think I want to give my bee some eyes. I'm going to let Farmer Betsy take this to see if it works at her. Farmer Betsy would like that in her garden. Okay, so let's try our last pollinator. So this is our last really cool super pollinator that I have made. And I'm going to go dip, 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 dip. Okay, so picked up some sugar. The coffee is kind of blending in with that brown pipe cleaner, so I really can't see that too much. But I do see right here on the chin of this bee, I see some pollen. So I would really, really, really like for all of you, if you have not made your pollinator during this summer camp session, I would really like for you, and if you don't, even if you don't like it, because like this one, the one I made, I could probably make that a lot better, and I could probably make this one do better, and I could probably do all kinds of things, but once you make your pollinators, it would be so cool for me to be able to see those. And the way I can see those pollinators is if you will either go to either email them to us at GYSTC.org, or go to our Facebook page, and then I can see them right away and post those pictures of those super cool pollinators. That would be so awesome for me to be able to do. Now, one last thing before I go is I want to ask you to please come back here with us tomorrow to summer camp. Tomorrow we're going to have a really super exciting day. We're going to be doing a camp, Rosie Revere's flying machine, and I know that you're all going to have a super great time. Don't forget to get on our Facebook page and send in those emails and tell me how much you love our honeybees. Anyway, thank you for joining us. Remember, GYSTC.org and the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Department on Facebook page.